Parents, if your baby's head and neck is favoring one side, meaning they're turning in the same direction all the time, or you notice that they typically tilt their head in one side, that is called torticollis, and it's more than just a tight muscle. You're typically just told to stretch it out, maybe do some tummy time, and just wait and see. But what most pediatricians won't tell you is that torticollis is not just about tight muscles. There's way more to the story that we see here. Maybe they noticed it at 2 months or 4 months that they were dealing with this, and they sent you home with some stretches, maybe we'll check back in the later, or a 4-month PT referral. Guys, there are so many better solutions to this because that's not addressing the real cause. The babies that we see that are struggling with this head and neck tension, oftentimes are dealing with other issues too. Maybe they're colicky and fussy, they're dealing with reflux, they're struggling to sleep. It's because there's more going on behind the scenes than just this tightness. What's going on and what's causing that neck tightness is a neurological disturbance and a neurological interference. There's a fancy word for that called subluxation. You don't need to remember that, but that's what we need to understand, is that is impacting their ability not just to turn their head and neck, but other developmental milestones, not just as a baby, but into the future, into school age things. We see this connected to later on struggles. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it a little bit more in depth. This is one of the most common issues that we see kids struggling with, and it does have massive lifelong impacts. There is just a recent kiddo that we had going through this sort of neck tension, torticollis, and for him it was also plagiocephaly, meaning a head flattening, and they needed a helmet to resolve that. What was amazing though is because he was getting adjusted at the same time, because that underlying neck tension and full body neurological stress was also being addressed, he flew through the helmet protocol way faster than anybody expected. It took like half the time that his parents had been told to anticipate that he would be in the helmet, because his body was at a better place and that underlying cause was being addressed. But you can't just stretch this away, right? Nerves tell muscles what to do. Muscles are kind of dumb. They don't do anything on their own. They just do what the nervous system, what the neurology is telling it to do. So if we have that spasm, if you have the kid that's always stuck in the same position because of that tight muscle, the question you need to be asking is, why is it tight? Why is that jammed up? And where is it coming from? What we see all the time is this is coming from an injury that oftentimes happened at the birth process. The nervous system gets stuck in this dysregulated state because of birth trauma. Way too many births have extra interventions, whether that's forceps, vacuum extraction, C-section delivery. Those have a massive impact on that upper head and neck region for a baby, because you're pulling, right? You're pulling the baby out of the birth canal instead of mom and baby calling the shots and just navigating through that labor process like they're supposed to. Here's the thing though, even the most boring, uneventful, natural of births still is a big deal, right? Let alone the fact that maybe in utero positioning was a little bit tighter. They were crammed up and in this position where their head was laterally bent and they were compressed for a lot during the labor process. No matter what it was, we see so frequently that when we have kids dealing with that tension, when we go through their birth, their pregnancy case history, we find that there are some early warning signs that started early on in life. So we come out, usually within that first couple of days to weeks, you're noticing some sort of head preference. A lot of times it goes hand in hand with a latching preference too. Either we're struggling to nurse entirely, or maybe they have one side versus the other that is a little bit easier, because when their head is in that relaxed position, instead of the opposite, it's a little bit easier for mom and for baby. Or we'll hear moms tell us like, oh, they're fine in a cradle position on this side, but the opposite, I kind of have to hold them in a football hold so their neck will turn both ways. It's the same underlying tension, and it's the same indicator that there's something going on in that main region. That points us to some major overall neurological regulation challenges too. You'll see this fuse box poster here at Thrive. If you could zoom in and see on the video, what you would find is this very top of the nervous system, this upper neck brainstem region controls a lot of our overall functions. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve that runs your parasympathetic nervous system. That's called your brake pedal or your calming side of the nervous system. Digestion, immune system function, really our optimal growth and development is coming from those main upper neck brainstem regions. But that's also the same area you would see that torticollis presentation show up. That's why that torticollis and plagiocephaly diagnosis is right in that upper category too. Because the same injury that's going to show up as that head and neck rotation restriction is the same thing behind the colic, the reflux, the fussiness, the inability to sleep, and all of those other challenges. So that's what we need to address, is not just the neck tension. Yes, we want to see that change, but there's more to it. And that's also why stretching alone won't fix the problem. Even if you do an amazing job of PT and avoiding being on their back so that they don't turn into needing a helmet, that's awesome. I want you to do that. We encourage parents to do that. But unless you address that underlying neurological tone, that neurological stress response and dysregulation, it's going to show up later on as different things. That's what we'll see, stuff like ear infections, because that same area is also our ENT drainage. And if this is jammed up from a motor development side, the plumbing system, our ENT drainage is going to be compromised as well, which then also means that croup, RSV, some of those upper respiratory things can become a lot more hard for the kid to kick, right? They're a lot more likely to struggle with it if that plumbing and drainage system is an issue. But then as they get older, motor challenges, because head and neck control is at the foundation of tummy time, which is then what's going to drive crawling and walking and all those other higher motor development things. A lot of times we see those delayed or as struggle points when a kid is dealing with this. Maybe they never really crawled properly, which is such a huge neurological checkpoint. And then as they go on, the kids that we are meeting at Thrive later on in life, maybe they're school age dealing with sensory issues, or they're a little bit older than that and have ADHD struggles and focus and emotional regulation concerns. When we back up and we go through their case history, so frequently birth trauma is at the root of it. So frequently we see stuff like torticollis, flat head presentation, maybe some of the colic, reflux, fussy, nursing challenges as well. Those are so frequently behind the scenes with the later on in life challenges because it's the same underlying cause. It's the same underlying neurological disconnection that presents in a baby as that head and neck restriction where they're stuck and they can't turn their head evenly. But then as we get older, as ear infections, as motor delays, as sensory challenges and emotional regulations. The same underlying why, parents. That's what I want you to understand, is ask that cause question. I think that is the most missed one in healthcare, is we're looking at treating symptoms, right? Coming back to that fuse box poster, the right-hand columns, the different symptoms and struggles and challenges someone might be dealing with. That is where healthcare lives. It's managing and masking symptoms. It's finding another pill, finding another treatment, finding another intervention that just hides the secondary issue without addressing the cause, without addressing the why. And that's the part we're obsessed with. And that's the part that we get to see and to measure and to track through the scans, through our Insight neurological technology. Step one in any new patient relationship at Thrive is measuring the nervous system. It's seeing how well we are adapting to stress. Do we have some of those underlying findings? Is our nervous system stuck in fight or flight? Or are we adapting well? Are we handling life as we should? So if that's something your baby is dealing with, I encourage you, do not just wait and see and hope they grow out of it. Even if they do, even if they eventually get through that specific challenge, unless you address the underlying cause or why behind it, it's going to show up differently down the road. So we're here to help. Let us be a part of that journey. Reach out to our team and we would love to answer any questions and get you the support and the resources we need. Hope this helps. Can't wait to meet you soon and help your family thrive.